There's a book by Elif Shafak called The Island of Missing Trees. And for the most part, I don't think it's a great book, but there is one great concept in it. And I'm not even sure that she's that aware that she's written about it. She's talking about the fallout from the conflict between the Turks and the Greek side in Cyprus. And she's not focused so much on the actual conflict as on what happens afterwards and how the various families and characters in her book are destroyed by that conflict. One of the characters, Daphne, is committed to working working in Cyprus to try and repair some of the damage, to find the bodies of the dead and to repatriate them. Her husband, Kostas, is immersed in silence and spends most of the time in the novel talking to his fig tree and being quiet in something that his daughter doesn't understand. Daphne ends up dying, possibly by suicide. She's plunged into depression and alcoholism. Why? Because although her motives are good, she is still obsessed by or with the conflict. To be obsessed with conflict is to be drawn into that conflict. It doesn't matter what the reasons are. It doesn't matter whether they're good or bad, whether your intentions are good or bad. You are obsessed with conflict and with evil. And this can only produce a bad result. Focused on silence, what the Greeks would call isahia, this tends to produce a better result, and it certainly does in this book. Kostas survives enough for his daughter to turn a corner simply by listening to stories and to see some sort of resolution by the end of the book. To be caught up in conflict is bad. So it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. And I think at the moment, when we look around Europe and the UK and the US, we're caught up in conflict. It doesn't matter what our intentions are, the result is going to be bad. We might find a way through conflict, but we're all going to get hurt. We're all going to get hurt because all we're thinking about is the conflict and the resolution of that conflict, hurting others, avoiding getting hurt ourselves. All we're thinking about is hurt. We have to pull back and we have to commit ourselves to silence and to positivity. If we can't do that, we are plunged into pain. So the fact that Britain is going through an economic crisis and we are being led by crazy people is not that surprising. The fact that Europe is being plunged into crisis and being led by crazy people is not that surprising, because our focus is hurt and pain and problems. Now, some of that comes from Russia's attack on Ukraine. Some of it, I have no doubt, comes from our collective response to the threat of COVID. I think we need to pull back. There is no sense of silence. There's just babble going on and on and on. And until we find silence again, we will not find release. I don't want to sound too sententious or too gnomic about this. I'm as much a part of this as anybody. And yeah, I'm a great babbler. And I'm a great panicker. And certainly I've done a good deal of both in the last few weeks. But I think we need to collectively try to find some silence, or we will be pulled further into this maelstrom. And whose fault is it? Well, there are people to blame, but I think in the end we're all pulled in according to our characters. Some people's characters are foul, and this sort of crisis brings out the foulest of characters. And some people's characters are very good, and this brings out the saints and the martyrs and the people who are willing to go the further mile for the good of others. But pain is the overriding medicine we're all taking.